Rhyperior is one of the 3 Pokemon that were featured in the infamous Gen 4 leak/rumor. It's a vetted rumor because this person has leaked things before that were true. You know the drill. At any rate, this gives us a great opportunity to discuss what may be the greatest ground-type and rock-type Pokemon in Pokemon Go come Gen 4. If you're curious about Electivire, link in my description to a kind of analysis on Electivire, mostly in comparison to Raikou. And as far as Magmortar goes, I may do an analysis on Magmortar in the future. For now, we're focusing on Rhyperior. So comparing all of the ground-type Pokemon stats on GamePress, I found it to be very interesting that Rhyperior is number 2 in terms of CP. What makes this very interesting is Rhyperior is not a pseudo-legendary type Pokemon like Dragonite, Tyranitar, Metagross, Salamence. Actually, Garchomp is the pseudo-legendary Pokemon for Gen 4, and Rhyperior has superior CP to it. So I thought that was kind of cool as far as Rhyperior being a ground type. And if you take a closer look at the stats, it has a defense that is slightly lower than Groudon's, and it has an HP that is a bit higher than Groudon's. Now, if you multiply HP by defense, which is a generalized way to determine a Pokemon's bulk, it actually has more bulk than Groudon, so it is a tankier Groudon. To offset this, its attack stat is much lower, 29 points lower than Groudon, and 20 points lower than Garchomp, a competing ground type in Gen 4. So Rhyperior has a lower attack stat. Why did I say that it may be the greatest ground type Pokemon in Pokemon Go? Well, Rhyperior has a trick up its sleeve. You might be under the impression that Earthquake is the greatest ground type charge move in Pokemon Go, but if you take a closer look, that's just not the case. Yeah, so this is using DPS times DPE, damage per energy, and this is a good generalized metric to determine the value of a charge move. You'll see that Precipice Blades is number 1, and that's the signature move for Groudon. It's not released yet, and there's just a whole bunch of issues associated with Precipice Blades and Groudon that we're going to ignore that for this analysis. The number 1 move in circulation right now is Drill Run, and the number 2 is Dig, number 3 is Earthquake. Now you might be kind of surprised, Dig being better than Earthquake. Well, if you take a closer look, you'll see that it has a longer charge time, which works against Dig. It's got lower power, which works against Dig. But its DPS times DPE is slightly higher. Well, what's going on here? Well, Dig has half the energy cost, which is actually quite impressive. The main reason why you don't hear people talk about Dig being a great charge move is because nothing relevant really learns it. I mean, Marowak gets it for a fully evolved ground-type Pokemon, but Marowak ain't nothing. So yeah, all these Pokemon have Dig in their move pools, but none of them have the power to really make an impressive use out of it. Looking back at Drill Run, you might be curious, like, is this some sort of signature move for Rhyperior? Well, no, it's a general move that Pokemon can know. Actually, it is the signature move for Excadrill in Gen 5, but it got distributed to many Pokemon. And the reason why Drill Run's not talked about is because, similar reason, nothing relevant really learns it. Dunsparce, Fearow, Rapidash, Seaking, these 3 Pokemon here all have like a horn kind of appendage to use it. And Fearow is kind of known for the Drill Peck, so it makes sense that it gets Drill Run. But what's kind of confusing is the Nido family, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, and the Rhydon family, you know, Rhydon, Rhyperior, are known as the Drill Pokemon in the Pokemon universe. Like, that is their classification, Drill Pokemon. Not even Excadrill is a Drill Pokemon. It's actually like a subterranean Pokemon. So I found it kind of confusing that the Drill Pokemon aren't getting the Drill Run, especially when they're ground type, and it is the greatest ground type charge move. So yeah, kind of weird that they don't have it. When Gen 4 comes out, with the introduction of Rhyperior, this could be a great opportunity for a Drill Pokemon to finally get the Horn Drill, right? So if you're wondering, Ryan Swag, what does all this look like in practice? Well, you know I got some swaggy graphs on that. So these are simulations using Go Battle Sim against a Tier 5 Raikou using Volt Switch and Wild Charge, with no dodging and a great friendship tier. So the first thing you can see very clearly here is that Mudslap with Drill Run Rhyperior not only is tankier than Groudon, which is the X-axis total damage output, it's a more comprehensive usage of tankiness, right? but it also has higher DPS, which is the y-axis, damage per second. So yeah, it beats out Groudon in both respects in this Raikou encounter, which I found to be very impressive. Yeah, previous data on Drill Run Rhyperior suggested that it would be more even with Groudon, but I guess in this specific matchup with Raikou's damage output and defenses, Rhyperior actually beats Groudon out, which is pretty impressive. Now, if John Hanke does the Drill Pokemon family dirty once again and does not give Rhyperior Drill Run and instead chooses, this is a blatant, specific choice by John Hanke himself, gives Rhyperior Earthquake, well, then it's still going to be really good. It's comparable to Groudon in terms of DPS and tankiness. So, very good alternative ground-type Pokemon if you don't want to power up another Groudon, or you haven't powered up a Groudon yet. Then you could probably hold off on that because it seems that Rhyperior will very likely be as good as Groudon. Now, if you're curious about this scary-looking shark guy over here on the right, that is Garchomp. Garchomp is a ground dragon-type Pokemon. So despite having lower bulkiness than Rhyperior and Groudon, its dragon resistance stacks on top of its ground resistances to make it extra tanky against electric-type Pokemon specifically. So Garchomp is seeing a TDO advantage here. However, it's not having quite the DPS influence as the Drill Run is, since Garchomp here is still condemned to having the Earthquake. Garchomp actually has access to Dig. I didn't simulate it with Dig because I'm pretty sure it won't get Dig. John Hanke, if you're actually watching this, please give Garchomp Dig. That would be kind of hilarious to me. Now, if you go to the bottom left here, you'll see that there's Flygon, and yeah, Flygon has the same sort of resistance advantage that Garchomp does, with being ground and dragon type. But Flygon does not have pseudo-legendary tier stats, which is the main thing that's holding it back. Going up a bit, you'll see that there's Mamoswine, and if you saw my previous analysis, actually it was mostly on the Zapdos raid, I went over that Mamoswine is the greatest Ice-type Pokemon in Pokemon Go. When it comes out, it's going to be insanely powerful. If you want some more specific details on Mamoswine as an Ice-type, link in the description to that. But as a Ground-type Pokemon, it's good, but a little lackluster. I mean, it'll be better than Rhydon, but we got Rhyperior to deal with, and Mamoswine doesn't compare too well to Rhyperior. Actually, it's as good as the level 28.5 Groudon, which is the breakpoint for Mudshot in this raid on Groudon. So, something to keep in mind for the ground-type Pokemon. Yeah, overall, it looks like when we get Rhyperior, as so long as it keeps a ground-type quick move and actually gets a ground-type charge move, it's going to make some serious waves in the meta as far as ground-type Pokemon are concerned. If this Pokemon that has a very obvious drill on its face gets Drill Run, John Hanke, then it will surpass Groudon as a ground type in certain matchups, and it apparently does in this matchup. However, if John Hanke specifically does Rhyperior dirty and gives him Earthquake, then it's still going to be a very formidable and powerful ground type Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Now, you might be sitting at home thinking, Ryan Swag, Rhyperior is a ground and rock type Pokemon. What are Rhyperior's merits as a rock type Pokemon? Well, let me get into that. Alright, this is the Bulbapedia page, and this shows all the potential moves that Rhyperior can learn in the console games, which gives us a frame of reference for what they can learn in Pokemon Go. And going through this list, I found that Rhyperior does not learn Rock Throw, which is a huge neg against any Pokemon that wants to be a rock type attacker. However, I should highlight that at level 13 in the main series games, Rhyperior can learn Smack Down. Now, Smack Down is the Community Day move that was made specifically for Tyranitar's Community Day, but it is not a signature move. When Gen 4 comes out, maybe there'll be a moveset shakeup, and Niantic will distribute Smack Down to more Pokemon. At any rate, if Rhyperior does get Smack Down, that will be very promising for it as a Rock-type Pokemon. Another thing I should highlight about Rhyperior is that it actually has a signature move called Rock Wrecker. Yeah, it's what Rhyperior is known for. Massive rock-type attack in the main series games. In Pokemon Go, it's obviously not in circulation since there's no Pokemon that can learn it in the game, right? But if it were to get Rock Wrecker, that could be a huge boon for it as a rock type as well. How big of a boon? Well, we don't have any stats on Rock Wrecker, and Rhyperior is not even in the game yet, so I decided to not do a predictive analysis on that. As far as other Rock-type charge moves, it can learn basically all of them, so I looked at some of the best ones, and yeah, if you look at level 33, what's that move right there? Is that Drill Run? John Hanky, do you see that? Drill Run? Drill for the, where is it? I bet it says it on here. The Drill Pokemon, Drill Run, John Hanky. So let's look at the graph on the Rock-type Pokemon. So using Go Battle Sim, I simulated Rock-type counters against the Moltres raid using all of Moltres' movesets, no dodge, great friendship, and one thing I should note is that this is the Tier 5 Moltres raid, not the Tier 4 Moltres raid that we'll probably experience with Moltres Day in the future. And yeah, very clearly, if Rhyperior were to get Smack Down, it would become the superior Rock-type Pokemon. I mean, Tyranitar with the Smack Down is still doing more DPS to Moltres, but basically same DPS, much higher tankiness. You tell me what's better, right? So yeah, but just to kind of throw in again, I think it's kind of unlikely that Rhyperior will get Smack Down, but there's no knowing what Niantic's going to do when Gen 4 comes out, so we'll just have to see when the dust clears. If you're wondering why Tyranitar has 38 to 40 here, is because Smack Down gets a breakpoint at 38. That makes it as good as level 40. I like to include the breakpoints of the best Pokemon's attacks. Like you can see, there's the level 33 Tyranitar here. Try to, give you a frame of reference, but because the 38 overlaps with a level 40 Tyranitar in performance, I just want to let you guys know that I didn't forget about it and that it's included here, and that a level 38 Tyranitar is as good as a 40 in this matchup. But yeah, if we sink a bit lower, then we'll see that there are these Mud Slap Rhyperiors. I don't think it'll get Smack Down, or maybe not get Smack Down right away, but I think it is very likely that we'll get Mud Slap with another Rock-type charge move. The best Rock-type charge move in Pokemon Go is Rock Slide, right? But the second best is Stone Edge. So you might be kind of curious, why is Rock Blast doing better than Stone Edge? Well, Moltres resists Mud Slap, so Flying type has an immunity to resistance to Ground type damage. Ground type is super effective to Fire, so -2 + 1 is -1, so it's a resisted hit, and because of that, Rock Blast is a 3-bar charge move, and Stone Edge is a 1-bar charge move. So understandably, if you're using Rock Blast, that is more time that you're doing Rock type damage compared to when you're doing Ground type, which is the resisted type damage. So in this matchup specifically, because of these conditions, Rock Blast would be the better charge move compared to Stone Edge. Now you might be thinking, Ryan, Swag, that's not that big of a deal. They're like ever so slightly apart. Well, one thing I really want to highlight to you guys is the scaling on this graph. Yeah, this is 15 DPS to 30, which is actually just massive difference. So the difference here is like 16 to like 19. To give you some perspective, on the Raikou graph, the scaling was 13 to 18. So that's a difference of 5 DPS, right? That's the difference between Garchomp and Flygon, right? So if you were to keep that in mind, looking at this graph, the difference between Rock Blast and Stone Edge is kind of like the difference between Garchomp and Flygon, at least in terms of DPS, which should also give you kind of a crippling idea of just how powerful Smack Down would be for Rhyperior, and I guess how powerful Smack Down is for Tyranitar. So yeah, that's just to further emphasize just how important a Rock-type fast move is for a Rock-type Pokemon to make its way in the world of Pokemon Go. I mean, if you need any more reference, Regirock has basically unusable stats, but because it has Rock Throw and Stone Edge, it's still able to make the grade as a Rock-type attacker. Yeah, so Rhyperior may be a great Rock-type Pokemon, has a Rock-type signature move, but will it get Smack Down? We'll have to see, right? So that's all the data I have right now for Rhyperior. Looks like it could be the greatest Ground-type Pokemon in Pokemon Go, actually quite reasonably could be, especially if it gets Drill Run, the Drill Pokemon, Drill Run. I don't know, man, sounds like something that is deserved by the Rhyperior. As a Rock-type Pokemon, depends. If it gets Smack Down, then very obviously it'll become a great Rock-type attacker. If it doesn't get Smack Down, then I think we can take a pass on thinking about it as a Rock-type. or at least until some hype gets drummed up for the Rock Wrecker signature move that it has. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And if you like this content and you want to see more like it, well then subscribe to SwagTips. I do this stuff often. And if you want some more Gen 4 analysis, in the description I have links to articles and past videos I've done on Gen 4 if you want some further reading, further predictive analyses on these Pokemon. But yeah, I'm done. See ya.